I have to give the quickest shout out about their costumes. That was all part of a costuming grant that we were received this year. And so it's awesome to see them in action. Thank you.
It's 6:30, so I would like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask everybody to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. But before we do that, can we give do we have any parents of our performers here first? You get to rise first. We can thank you for sharing your very talented students with us. And thank you, Ms. Colmar, for bringing them to the meeting tonight. So I am going to ask everyone to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence to honor the memories of two students who we lost, Jordan Williams, an 11th grader at Shadow Mountain, and Reese Dortenzio, a Shadow Mountain homebound student.
United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Christensen,
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Here.
Dr. Lim,
Here.
Mr. Pantera,
Here.
Ms. Wani.
Here.
Thank you. The next 6 items on our agenda are related to the board organizational portion of tonight's meeting. Next on the agenda is nomination and election of board president. Does anyone have a nomination for 2025 board president? Oh. Ms. Wani?
Yes, I would like to nominate and elect, make a motion for Anne Greenberg to remain as the governing board president for 2025.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a nomination for board president? Seeing none, Mr. Pantera may have a motion to approve the nomination for me, for Anne Greenberg to serve as 2025 board president.
So moved.
Does any board member have a comment, question? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Motion passes 4 ayes, 1 nay. Next on the agenda is nomination and election of President Pro Tem for 2025. Does anyone have a nomination for President Pro Tem for 2025?
I have a nomination.
Ms. Wani?
I'd like to nominate Tony Pantera for the position of pro temp for 2025.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a nomination for President Pro Tem for 2025? Seeing none, Mr. Pantera may have a motion to approve the nomination for Tony Pantera to serve as President Pro Tem for 2025, to preside over any meeting during the 2025 calendar year in the absence of the governing board president.
So moved.
Does any board member have a comment or question? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is establishing the order of roll call vote. So consistent with the board's practice, the order of voting is decided by lot during the organization meeting in January of each year. Each board member drew a number prior to the start of the meeting. Mrs. Chisholm will call on each of us now to announce our numbers to determine the order of roll call vote for this calendar year.
Mrs. Christensen,
Your number?
number 1. Mrs. Greenberg,
3,
Dr. Lim, 4. Mr. Pantera,
2.
Ms. Wani.
5.
thank you. Next on the, sorry. Next on the agenda is approval of authorized signatories. May I have a motion to appoint all governing board members as authorized signatories for the 2025 calendar year? Mr. Pantera?
Yeah, so moved.
Do any board members have a comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is authorization of signature stamps. May I have a motion to authorize the use of facsimile signature stamps of governing board members for the 2025 calendar year? Mr. Pantera?
So moved.
Any board member wishing to make a comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. And next on the agenda is approval of resolution number 570. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number 570, authorization to ratify vouchers, which approves the signing of expense vouchers between board meetings and resolves to ratify the expenditures as reported at each regularly scheduled board meeting? Mr. Pantera?
So moved.
Does any board member have a comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, that concludes our organizational meeting, and the next on the agenda is approval of agenda. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Governing Board, Cabinet, and guests. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the Governing Board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have had time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the Governing Board may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. Any member of the audience who submitted a blue public comment card prior to the start of the meeting will be recognized to speak on that agenda item under items for approval. I would like to offer the agenda as posted.
Thank you. Prior to the meeting, we received no blue public comment cards, and so there will be no member of the audience speaking on specific agenda items. Does any member of the governing board wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, I would like to have items F10 and F12 from the consent agenda. And I also had a concern. I move that we remove item G2 from the agenda because I'm concerned that it might be a violation of procurement law. We didn't, last time we were doing a superintendent search, we actually went out for bid. And so it's interesting that we are just going to have this as an item for approval. And while it may fall under the threshold for the dollar amount that we may not need to do that, I think it would be in our best interest as a district to make it transparent and to actually do go out for bid instead of approving just one vendor for a superintendent search, which is one of our most important decisions. So I can make a motion.
Well, I think when it comes to item G2, we can take it up, that, your suggestion of removing it from the agenda, we can take up then. But we will move F10 and F12, that's what you had, right? So, per policy, those will now be moved to after G3 on items for approval.
Thank you, President Greenberg.
Does anybody else have anything they would like to move from the consent agenda? Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda and recommended consent agenda items?
Yeah, I move that we approve the approval of agenda minus items 10 and 12, which will be further down in the agenda.
Okay.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is governing board statements. Mrs. Christensen, would you like to go?
Yes, thank you, President Greenberg. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. I always appreciate when there's community members in attendance because we report to you all, and so I always appreciate you being informed and coming to the meetings. I do have an exciting proclamation or announcement that so the Horizon class of 2024 had 3 students that got accepted to the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I just found out over the holiday break. Initially, there was 1 student that's already attending, and 2 more got accepted. And for those of you that don't know, this is like the Harvard of music school, and it's such an amazing accomplishment. And I know that I always shout out to our wonderful arts departments, including NVAA, but Horizon Choir is phenomenal. And I wanted to thank Mr. Droge because there is going to be something in marketing, right? A picture, maybe, perhaps. But it is a big deal. And so I just wanted to shout out to those 3 individuals. And lastly, I just wanted to welcome our new board members here today. And congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Christensen. Mr. Pantera?
Thank you, President Greenberg. We were at the last Arizona School Board Association assembly, and I heard this speaker. We all heard the speaker that were there, Stephen Constantino. Okay, I even got the book, Engaging Families, Every Family. I really love that idea. I've always loved the ideas of making sure that we always want our students engaged, but parent engagement. And it's more than just student parent-teacher conferences and things like that. The 2 things that he mentioned right away that got my interest about some of his philosophies is the fact that this doesn't cost anything. Okay, number 1 for a board, free, great, love it. And it doesn't place a lot of burdens on staff to learn a whole new curriculum, a whole new way of doing things. It's just 5 simple principles. Although if they're so simple, at least 5 of them, it's a pretty thick book, you know. But I got a copy. I bought one. I got the used one with all the notes, kind of like Harry Potter and, you know, the Half-Blood Prince. Okay, so I've got all the inside info on that. Any teacher or staff member wants to read the book or talk about these principles, I'd be glad to do so. It's about doing what we do already, but having even more conversations about it, welcoming people, letting them know that they're valued no matter where they are, what part of the district. And so if you wanted to get on board with that, the first cup of coffee is on me. All right, thank you. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pantera. Dr. Lim?
Great, thank you. Welcome to 2025, and I just want to take a moment to say I feel very privileged to be joining the board. And I've appreciated the opportunity to already connect with our communities, and I just wanted to take a moment to highlight 2 great opportunities I got to do. Right before the holiday break, I got to attend North Ranch Elementary School, and I got to join their readathon. It was a great opportunity to not only read to kindergarteners and share with them that I struggle reading out loud because I have a learning disability, dyslexia, and I still struggle reading out loud, but also to see the community come together and see all these amazing community members showing up with their books to read to all the different classrooms at North Ranch. It was a great opportunity to connect and see our community coming together. And just last night, I got to connect with my daughter's community at Whispering Winds Academy. Their PTSO and we know our parent-teacher organizations are invaluable parts of our community, organized an event. But more than anything, our teachers took the time out of their evening. We were at an ice cream parlor to actually serve the ice cream to the students. The students were so excited to see their teacher serving their ice cream. But more than anything, us parents felt we really like seeing our students connect with their teachers outside of the classroom and really show that their community can come together outside of the classroom. It was great being involved, and I appreciate being on the board already and those opportunities to connect with our community and support them.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Ms. Wani.
So yeah, I'd like to just reiterate an appreciation and of just my sincere gratitude. It's a great service and honor to be able to sit here before you. I've been a parent volunteer in this district for many, many, many years on sitting with you all on the other side of the dais, and I take this role very, very seriously. And I am honored and humbled to be in a position of service. So thank you to everyone for your support. And I also had the chance to read, but I didn't get kindergartners. I got sixth graders, and I was really, really nervous about that. But to my surprise, they were the biggest loves ever. And it just filled my heart. And it was just such a great reminder of like why we're all here, while everyone on this board is here, and while you all are all here in the audience today. And so I am super, super excited to have more opportunities like that and to kind of learn that, you know what, I maybe had some ideas about what sixth graders were like, and they just blew me away. I was super nervous that they were gonna like throw things at me or think my story was boring. And they were just like the most polite, wonderful, engaged little humans. So yay. So everybody at North Ranch, thank you for that. And what a great job everybody is doing, parents, families. And I really do look forward to more opportunities like that. And so with that said, I'm going to cut myself off because I don't want this meeting to go too long for everyone here.
Thank you, Ms. Wani. I'd also like to officially welcome Dr. Lim and Ms. Wani to the board. Like to thank everybody for being here today, and I'd like to thank the community for trusting me again to serve as a governing board member. I think this position is incredibly critical to supporting our students, our teachers, our staff, our families. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to continue to make a positive difference in our community in such a vital way as a public servant, to be part of something that I feel is truly monumental and life-changing, and the essence of who we are as citizens in ensuring that our children receive a quality education. I'd also like to thank my colleagues for trusting me to serve again as board president this year, as we all work together to ensure everyone in our PV community shares in and is well positioned along their individual and our collective journey of excellence. So thank you all for being here. And next on the agenda is awards and recognitions. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. At this time, I'd like to invite the governing board to join me in front of the dais.
Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, members of cabinet, and attendees both in person and virtual. Tonight, we have several recognitions to share with you. This evening, we'll be inviting our honorees to the front of the room for their recognition and photo. So when your name is called, please make your way to the front of the room. Our first honorees tonight won their 4th straight 5A Girls Volleyball State Championship after defeating #1 ranked Sunrise Mountain in 4 sets. This team lost the first set, then went on to win the next 3 in nail-biting fashion. This team is truly a force to be reckoned with, and we're excited to welcome the 2024 AIA 5A Girls Volleyball State Champions from Horizon High School. A lot of this team, no doubt, is practicing this evening. So we have Coach McKenna Skaggs, varsity assistant coach Sarah Kerbaugh, and varsity manager senior Bella Heimer. Our next honorees recently earned the prestigious AIA Sportsmanship Award. This coveted award is an annual tradition given to one team in each conference that consistently displays the highest level of sportsmanship throughout the season, as determined by the officiants. This football organization's commitment to fair play, respect for opponents, and overall positive conduct on the field has earned them this well-deserved recognition. Please help me welcome from Horizon High School, AIA Football Sportsmanship Award recipients, Horizon Football. With us this evening is Jackson Murray, Jace Ashley, Jax Markovic, Bo Caliendo, Mateo Johnson, Ethan Brennan, and Coach Tyson Ditmore.
Come on up.
Next is the Paradise Valley Education Support Professional of the Month. PVSCA President, Ms. Michelle Courtright, is here to make the presentation.
President Greenberg, Governing Board, Dr. Reynolds, and Cabinet. My name is Michelle Courtright, and I am the president of the ESP Association. And it is with great honor that I get to recognize one ESP, exceptional ESP, every month. And this month we are recognizing Alicia Shapcott. She is the record secretary over at Sonoran Crossing Elementary. And she has been described as multiple things: an Energizer Bunny, a jack of all trades, and many people think of a record secretary as somebody who just manages records. Well, in our district, not only do they manage records, they take care of attendance. They also greet every person that comes in. They answer the phone calls. They call parents when their child isn't there. They're the first person you see, and usually the last person if you're walking in and out of the office. But I guess Alicia also does crosswalk, which is unusual. She also helps with noon duty. So she wears a lot of hats, but she is described as someone who has a personality that has a warm smile. She has a contagious energy, and no matter what kind of mood you are in when you walk into her office, you're going to walk out with a smile on your face because she has treated you with respect and dignity. It says Alicia's contributions to our school community are immeasurable. Whether it's lending a hand to a colleague, keeping an eye on students, or just supporting our families, she does it with grace, positivity, and a genuine commitment to make Sky Crossing the best place it can be. So it is with my pleasure that we recognize Alicia Shapcott to be the ESP of the month for January.
Last but certainly not least is the recipient of the Paradise Valley Education Association's recognition of Professional Standards Award for Teachers. The honoree will be introduced this evening by Ms. Heather Schmidt, PVEA President.
Put it in Heather mode. Good evening, President Greenberg, Dr. Reynolds, Governing Board, and Cabinet. Thank you for having me. My name is Heather Schmidt, and I'm proud to serve as the president of the Paradise Valley Education Association, which represents our certified employees. Once a month, I get to stand here and talk to you about props, which is professionals recognizing other professional successes, and our members are nominated by each other to receive this award. This evening, I am honored to recognize Jenna Galvin, a reading specialist at Palomino Primary, as the recipient of the January 2025 PEA Props. She was nominated by her colleagues, Lissa Davis and Amy Gherkin, who are both here this evening to celebrate her. From Miss Davis, Jenna is the Title I reading specialist at Pal Primary. I love working with her because she is knowledgeable, creative, passionate about helping our students. She is so easy to collaborate with and is always willing to help when needed. She is also our Title I coordinator on our Title I leadership team and co-leads our MTSS Literacy Committee. In addition to being an amazing colleague, she also teaches 7 intervention periods each day with kindergarten through 3rd grade students to help them build their reading skills, and created a 3rd grade reading club to encourage their love of reading. From Ms. Gherkin, Jenna is a strong leader and she has demonstrated her leadership in so many ways. Again, a note about the book club that meets once a week during her lunchtime, and she started a 100% club in star reading for 2nd and 3rd graders, and again, MTSS literacy. Jenna motivates her students with her genuine caring and support for them. As a colleague, she is positive, helpful, and committed to success for all. As Ms. Davis and Ms. Gherkin both said, we are fortunate to have Ms. Galvin as an educator in PV schools and as a member of PVEA. Congratulations, Mrs. Gavin.
And that, President Greenberg, concludes this evening's awards and recognitions.
Thank you all. Congratulations again to all of our recognees, shall we say. And next on the agenda is superintendent's comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Governing Board, tonight I would also like to welcome our new Governing Board members, Ms. Jessica Wani and Dr. Amanda Lim. Thank you for being here and choosing to support PV schools in this way, as well as re-welcome President Greenberg, who will obviously be serving another four-year term. So thank you for your service. All 3 members were joined by friends, family, and loved ones prior to the start of the December Governing Board meeting, where they were officially sworn in as the newest members of the Paradise Valley Unified School District Governing Board. So congratulations to you and all your family and friends. I look forward to working with the board to advance our district's goals and continue providing an unparalleled educational experience for our students. In PV schools, we engage, inspire, and nurture students through high-quality education, meaningful educational opportunities, and dynamic learning experiences. One of those opportunities is the proactive approach we take with our health and wellness initiatives. Every year, we host a 5K fun run, and this year is no different. So please join us for the 15th annual PV Schools Community 5K Fun Run and Health Fair. This event encourages active lifestyles among our staff, families, and community members, and will be held on Saturday, February 1st, 2005 at Horizon High School. To register, visit runsignup.com between now and Saturday, February 1st. Participants who register by January 17th, 2005 will receive a Fun Run t-shirt. For more information, please visit the new MyLink page and visit our news section to find out what color this year's shirt will be. Listen to this week's episode of our district podcast, PV Beat, available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are hiring bus drivers. Join the PV Schools transportation team and be the driving force behind student success. As a bus driver, you'll play a vital role in our community by safely transporting students to and from school and other events. We offer flexible schedules, competitive pay, and we will provide your CDL training at no cost. If you enjoy working with children and want a rewarding career with excellent benefits, apply today at pvschools.net/bus. PV Schools is here to guide families on their journey of excellence and hopes to inspire and influence them when choosing the best school for their children. With National School Choice Week quickly approaching, I want to thank all of our families who have chosen PV Schools. The district is proud to offer a variety of unique opportunities that meet the individual needs of every child. With programs such as advanced placement, athletics, career and technical education, dual enrollment, dual language immersion, fine arts, and much, much more, PV Schools wants to continue to encourage parents to make decisions about their children's education based on the factors that matter most. PV Schools is a leader in choice, and I can say with confidence that families have so much variety and ample choices here in Paradise. Visit our website at pvschools.net to see all the great opportunities we have to offer. And with that, my comments are concluded.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Next on the agenda is items for approval. The first item is consideration and approval of governing board norms for 2025. We discussed this at our retreat. Thank you. Was it a study session? No, it was at our retreat. And we talked about the need to perhaps expand and add an item which we are recommending, which came out of the retreat. And in addition to the norms that we have approved in the past, we are adding a norm that says, as a member of the Paradise Valley Unified School District Governing Board, I will use social media and artificial intelligence responsibly and ethically to support the well-being of the district. We felt it was important to include further language, especially given expansion, shall we say, of social media and AI currently. So that is really the only change from the previous board norms. Mr. Pantera, may I please have a motion to approve the governing board 2025 board norms as presented?
I move that we approve the governing board 2025 board norms.
Does any board member have a comment in regard to the norms? Mrs. Christensen?
The new item that was added, I was not privy to the discussion that happened. And so I just wanted to know who decides if we're using social media and artificial intelligence responsibly and ethically. I am not for censoring anyone. And so I just would like to hear a little bit about that discussion. I was ill that day and could not attend.
I mean, anybody wants to jump in, jump in. I think it was, just a concern, because we have something in here where we do talk about respectful being, in person and online, but it was felt that there are so many more opportunities to, in terms of social media, which we know is this big, in a lot of ways, amorphous, entity. And with all of the board norms, this is each of us saying that these are things that we will do, that we intend to do as board members. Are we going to sit here? I don't think we really had a discussion about defining responsibly and ethically, but I think we all, I would think, have similar views on what that would look like. This particular wording, we kind of had a discussion, and then Dr. Reynolds, you can jump in. He took the lead with cabinet to craft some language, and we got it last week, right? Yeah, and so it was distributed last week in the update, and you received no changes, I presume. So That's where we're putting it in.
Yeah, happy.
Mr. Pantera?
I especially like it because of, it's got that artificial intelligence portion in there, the ethics. We're asking our students to do this all the time in their classrooms, our staff. I'd like to be, be, as us, be an example of how to do that. And we should take on the same thing we're asking our students and teachers to do. That's why I really like this particular item being added.
Dr. Lim?
Go ahead and add to that. This is, especially in the AI and artificial intelligence, is something that's being added to lots of norms and policies around the country and in different organizations as we're moving into this AI technology, just to make sure that we're upfront and using these technologies appropriately as we move forward. And we're thinking very streamlined and ethically as we move forward in this, just to be prepared as this technology further and further develops and becomes a more integrated part of our way of functioning.
And I'll just add, and actually it was Dr. Lim that brought up this really important point about AI, which is, a lot of those new platforms, right? They're not private, so putting anything in there potentially could be a violation, right, of like student privacy and those kinds of things, family privacy. And I really appreciated that because it wasn't really something I had thought about in terms of like the context of a school district. And so that was kind of another piece, if that is all at all helpful, that we really did kind of dive into a little bit.
Does that answer your questions?
Thank you. I just was curious about the discussion and I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments about the board norms? So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Next on, sorry, I've got a lot of papers here. Next on the agenda is consideration and if deemed advisable, retain the services of the Arizona School Administrators, Inc., ASA, for the purpose of conducting a superintendent search and take possible action to approve the ASA Executive Search Services Agreement. I would like to ask Dr. Tim Ogle to provide a presentation in regard to this agenda item before we discuss it.
President Greenberg, can we postpone that so that I could, because I did want to make a motion to table this item. And so I don't want to hear the presentation until after the motion that I wanted to make is done. I move to postpone the discussion, the presentation until after the board has had a conversation about this item.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's a main motion, so it does not require a second. Mrs. Christensen, would you like to address it?
Yes. So last year, when we were conducting a superintendent search, President Greenberg and I we took the lead to work with procurement, to do a procurement search to figure out what vendor we were going to use. And we did our due diligence and we did do some research. I felt we did a good job of interviewing and taking time. In the spirit of transparency, I think it would be wise to perhaps add this to the consideration of what we've already done. I do understand that it's a different superintendent search because that was prior to the board deciding to do an interim superintendent. But for us to just add this for approval, it may be a violation of procurement law. I did look into it a little bit and I think it might be under that threshold, but it definitely is not transparent, nor should we be approving this item without looking at other vendors.
Can you provide, if you're saying you think it might be against procurement law, what specifically?
When we were doing important procurement searches, including vendors, we either have to follow certain things, like I know we do a lot of job order contracts. This is a different situation because we are actively asking for vendors to come and present us so that we can search for a superintendent. It's my understanding that we did not get multiple bids or quotes, and we are just going ahead with approval with just one vendor, whereas last year we looked at several. And so I'm concerned that we're changing the process and that it is not transparent or fair to other vendors that may be able to provide similar or other types of services. We need to have all options on the table because this is a very important decision. This is the board's most important decision is to pick a good superintendent for our district. And so I think rushing this is a mistake. And so I would like to move to table this item until we've compared it to some of the other research that we've done.
Dr. Reynolds?
So it might be helpful just to talk a little bit about the conversation that the board had at the retreat around this item regarding a past look and why we wanted to bring ASA as an option for the board to review from the board's perspective.
Do you want to talk about your introduction into the topic?
Sure,
from the
absolutely, yeah. So
retreat?
when at the retreat, we discussed a variety of options. We talked about the fact that, you know, you had mentioned the review that I think yourself and President Greenberg went through last year. ASA fell outside of that. And so the board wanted to have an opportunity to review the services that they provide. There is no obligation at the end of the presentation for you to vote yes or no on it. We could table it. But the conversation, as I remember it, that the board members that were there wanted to hear that presentation from ASA.
Why was this item not included as an item for discussion rather than approval? If we just wanted to hear what they had to offer, going ahead and approving this would be premature and reckless, in my opinion, because we need to look at all options on the table.
So the discussion around that was to make it an actionable item so that after the presentation, if this was a service that the board wanted to use, that you would have the option to be able to do that. There was a discussion around discussion, action, and we talked about the fact that after the presentation, if the board did not want to take action, you don't have to.
So is the approval of this item would be, yes, we would approve to go forward with this vendor? Or is approval meaning, yes, we would consider this in addition to others? Because to me, the way it's worded, it implies that approval would mean, yes, we would go forward with ASA rather than being transparent and looking at all options on the table and looking at other companies as well.
No, so the item on the agenda this evening would be to approve ASA after the presentation, after you've heard what ASA has to offer as far as a search service, that you have that option to then approve them as the search.
Why were not other companies, vendors invited to have this discussion with this new board?
Any governing
You-
board members want to?
I believe one of the things that drew us to want to have this presentation first was that this particular company, the fees involved are below a certain threshold. Every other vendor out there is way beyond in price compared to this one. That's how I think it was explained to us then. So, well, let's listen to this one, which seems to me the cheapest version. And anything else would be a lot more expensive. I remember when we put out the bids before too, it was hard to get anybody to put in a bid for the search. You know, when you and President Greenberg were on those companies, well, we were lucky to have 2 bids put in. But our general discussion on this was, well, let's see what they have to offer. We can vote it up or down, either way, but let's see what they got. And that's why we chose to have this presentation today.
Ms. Wani?
You know, when we did have this conversation and this discussion, again, like Dr. Reynolds said, we did kind of have a little bit of a back and forth about, oh, you know, do we have it just as an item, you know, for discussion? Again, we wanted to sort of preserve the option to be able to go ahead if that's what we wanted to do. At this point, I mean, I think a reasonable step forward could be, we could listen to the presentation and just table it for now and at least, you know, get the information, because Mr. Ogle is here today, and then we can have a conversation and a discussion, and we don't necessarily have to vote on this today.
Mrs. Christensen?
So I find it highly inappropriate to have to have had this discussion in a mini retreat. We have a responsibility to this district to be transparent and to do the absolute best job of finding a superintendent, not just the cheapest vendor, but the absolute best. And we would need to look at all the options on the table and absolutely take price into consideration, but is this going to be the right thing? And when you only have one choice, it doesn't make sense for our district, in my opinion, to just say yes or no on this, because the timeline that we're looking at is very aggressive. And I'm just concerned. I brought this up several months ago. When are we going to do the superintendent? And it was not put on an agenda. So I'm a little bit concerned that all of a sudden we're trying to rush this through with just one vendor and not provide all the choices so that this governing board, this new board, can best decide which vendor can support our district.
Do you have a motion?
Yes, the motion on the floor is, actually, Mrs. Christensen, could you repeat your motion, please?
I move to table this discussion to consider other vendors so that we can do a complete superintendent search. So I move to table this item number G2.
All right, does anybody else have any other comments? All those in favor of tabling item G2, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
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 Nay. Any abstentions? The motion fails 4-1. So we will proceed with Dr. Ogle. Thank you for your patience, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. Thank you for having me here tonight. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for your service here to the district. And I am a representative of the Arizona School Administrators Association. Ms. Christensen, thank you for your feedback. And it's probably a misnomer to call the Arizona School Administrators a vendor in comparison to other vendors. We're a private nonprofit of which your administrative team is a member, but you pay membership dues to the Arizona School Administrators Association. So it's a private nonprofit mission-driven organization in the state of Arizona that exists to support districts and school leadership. And so therefore, that's, why we're here, so to speak. There are a number of private for-profit companies that do superintendent searches. They do a number of searches each year in Arizona. The Arizona School Administrators have done a majority of the superintendent searches over the last couple of years for districts around the state. And so we have as contractor and contract employees some of the top school leaders around the state. We tend to know the candidate pool very intimately because we have worked in the field. And we certainly know districts, local cultures, and we pride ourselves in that kind of arena because we've been in the seats. And myself, I have been involved in dozens, if not more than dozens, of superintendent searches during my career, both as a candidate and as a hiring person and as a representative of school boards for nearly a decade. So with that all being said, we're certainly at your service to try to provide the best kind of opportunity for this board and this community. And you're correct, all of you have recognized that this is the number one important function of a board, to represent your community, and folks voted for you. And they have great trust in you to make a good decision and bring the next leader for PV schools, forward. So that's why we're here. We're here to help you be successful. So that all being said, the presentation will go on as is. This is the goals of the search, of course, and that would be to select the highest qualified and best fit to lead your district into the future. And all along with process, ensuring transparency and stakeholder input, because this is a community, I know your district very well, and I know that there's lots of public interest in your schools. And so that's a great thing, and that's an asset that we would certainly leverage as we move through the process. The typical search runs through 6 phases. So phase 1 would be where we could develop a profile and a timeline and work with the board to bring forward an advertisement and, like I said, the community engagement strategies and those kind of things. And we would bring that back for the board for approval. And that would allow the Arizona School Administrators Network to publicly advertise and recruit candidates. The Arizona School Administrators is part of a national organization. And so any advertisement and recruiting would include a national perspective. There are state associations like us in each of the 50 states, and the network includes all of those folks. And in a district of this size and sophistication, I would anticipate, a national marketplace where you'll have candidates from other states who certainly have interest in a position of this caliber. So if that's phase 1, phase 2 then, once you develop your profile and your expectations and the board participates in the kind of person that you want to recruit, then we do the advertising and the posting. Normally we need probably around a month for phase 2 for us to do our work and for us to talk to candidates in the profession. Phase 3 then would occur when we bring the candidates to the board. That typically is done in executive session because the anonymity of the candidates is very important in order to bring in top candidates and people that already have jobs, so to speak. We would do that in executive session. Those names would remain confidential as we kind of go through phase 3 and you select candidates to interview. And phase 4, we would do our interviews once again in executive session to ensure anonymity of the candidates. And once that occurs, then the board would identify the finalists, and that's the point at where there would be a public motion to identify the candidates by name and create some kind of community opportunity for folks in your district to interact with those individuals. At the end of that, then, the board would name one finalist to enter into contract negotiations with. and that culminates with phase 6. And so that's typical of the process and the steps to get from the beginning to the goal of having someone in place by July 1, or yeah, by July 1st. So yeah, so if there's questions, feel free to stop me along the way. So, okay.
Mr. Pantera?
Yes, you mentioned phase 2 be like basically an estimate of a month.
Yes.
All 6 phases, there an estimation on that? How much time?
Yes, thank you for your question. That's a good one. And when I work with boards, I like to work backwards, so to speak. And so if our goal is to have someone in place under contract, let's call it the first week of April, then that gives you the month of March to have phase 3, 4, and 5. It gives you the month of February to have phase 2 completed. And that gives us, a couple of weeks to get phase 1 completed. And that puts in place the ability for your attorney and the candidate to bring a recommendation to the board in early April.
So basically, we're setting a deadline, and we work backward to make it happen by our deadline kind of thing.
Well, yeah, that's
Sort
that's Tim's recommendation. You can do it different ways. You
Oh.
could look at a May, you could stretch it out and try to get a candidate identified by the early May and delay things by a month. Knowing the marketplace, so to speak, you're at the place where you need to accelerate because good candidates are beginning to interview other places. And there are several districts that are doing just what you're doing, the next few weeks. And so, it's not urgent, but yes, we need to not drag our feet to have a successful outcome. Other questions? Good questions. This particular chart has a lot of detail on it that may not matter tonight, but it's from an education standpoint matters. So this identifies each phase of the 6 phases and then what the board's actions and commitment would be. And so you can review this on your own time. I don't need to read it to you, but you'll see that phase 1, we develop the profile and the timeline. We bring that to the board for approval. Then we participate in phase 2, where we do our recruiting and advertising. And during that time, many boards will want to participate with their community in anonymous survey collection so that we can develop the kinds of expectations your community has for the new leader. And then you move into phase 3, 4, and 5, where the board is intimately involved in screening, interviewing, and we like to describe it like a funnel because you begin broad and you end narrow during that month of phase 3, 4, and 5. Okay. The duties and responsibilities of the Arizona school administrators, should we be asked to be your representative, are identified there. They include, consulting with the board. My recommendation is that we would identify a liaison from the board to work with myself as the consultant to help facilitate some of the progress along the way. Of course, all actions require board approval, but a board liaison can help speed the process so that we don't have to keep coming back for board meetings. And communicating with the applicants, developing the template, et cetera. And then those are the kind of things that you could expect from your consultant. The duties of the PV board then would be, of course, honoring the open meeting law and referring all the communications from the applicants to the search consultant. Of course, being present, honoring the open meeting law, and maintaining strict confidentiality along the way. We recommend that the board follow a moratorium with the media and refer all media contacts to the consultant. And remembering that in order to have quality candidates, the responsibilities of the board are observed by candidates. And their careers are in your hands, so to speak, particularly in the early phases when we're working with candidates, privately. So those are our guidelines and recommendations along the way. So I'm happy to have any kind of discussion that the board would like to have with regards to the process, timeline, the role of the search consultant, of the School Administrators Association. We're open for discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ogle. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Ms. Wani?
Thank you so much for that. You answered a lot of questions that I already had like through your presentation, but I do just have a couple of questions. Just even just about the organization itself, and thank you for the introduction where you
Sure.
kind of did speak a little bit about it. So as a nonprofit, you could you just speak maybe just generally about like the mission of your organization?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. The mission of the Arizona School Administrators is to develop strong leadership in school districts. That's why the association exists. Individual administrators pay dues through their district offices, and it's several thousand membership wide. Virtually every district across the state is represented by our association. Lots of staff development, lots of training and conferences for your leadership teams. We've, in the last few years, been doing more of this kind of work because districts have asked us to, basically. And we know lots of board members around the state and have worked in virtually every county, and folks have called and said, can you help us? So that's kind of how we have emerged into this environment.
Okay, so it sounds like your mission is to serve this, this population and administrators across our state. You heard a cry for there's like a gap in services. We need this from you, something affordable, and you guys rose to the occasion. If I'm understanding.
Yeah.
So how
well
much? So
stated.
it's been a couple years that you've been
No,
helping facilitate these kinds of things.
I'm sorry, I spoke too soon, but no, it's a couple of years for the association. Yes, myself individually, I've been doing this for decades.
Okay, so prior to being with ASA, you helped run these kinds of searches
Yes,
in other organizations.
yes.
Were those nonprofit organizations also, or were those more of the for-profit kinds that you had experience with?
All nonprofit. All of my experience professionally has been with school districts or with nonprofit associations.
Okay, wonderful. And so you've been at this a long time. Just would you? And I know you're obviously. I mean, you work for the association, but you seem very trustworthy. So if I ask you, do you think that ASA is is rising to the occasion at the same level in the same way that some of these for-profit pricey consultants are? Like, could you kind of give us a sense of your thoughts around that?
I think we're better.
Okay.
I think we're better at it because we know everybody. We know everybody in the state. We know the candidates. We know the colleagues. We know the culture of each of the districts. And, not being brazen in any way, but we're better at it.
And just one more question. How many districts, like at any given time, are you working with? And if you could just give us a sense of how many districts in Arizona right now that you're, helping facilitate their superintendent search efforts.
Right now we have, I've got a count in my head. We have a colleague of mine who tends to work more in southern Arizona, and there are 3 searches going along in that area. We're working with 3 suburban Maricopa County districts currently, and 1 in northern Arizona. Those are all going on right now, and we anticipate a few more coming along the way. So, yeah, great questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Christensen?
So I did find my notes from our superintendent search, and ASA actually did give an RFQ to us last year in addition to McPherson and Brain Associates. And
I don't believe that was information. I believe you can address the 2 that we talked about.
right. my question is, how many superintendents have you placed? Because it was my understanding that ASA was new and that maybe one reason why ASA was not as desirable for a large district such as Paradise Valley Unified School District. Specifically, how many have you placed?
As an association? Or
How many superintendents have you placed in school districts? with
myself or?
ASA, no.
Oh, I would have to count, Ms. Christensen. I would say probably in the neighborhood of 20. But
And so that
mean,
was
that-
all this year, because when we were looking, one of the reasons why when I was doing research on your company, you had not placed one superintendent yet when we were looking on, as of January 11th, 2024. So are you saying that over the span of 12 months, you've placed 20 superintendents? Are you sure about that number?
No, I'm not sure about the number. And I've also know that during the previous year, we probably did a dozen during the 23-24 hiring cycle, so to speak. And now we have these current ones going on. But I think it's important to understand that the search consultants themselves each have been doing this kind of work for years also in other places. The Arizona School Administrators Association moved into this arena at the request of members. And so as an association, it's been a couple of years. But, you know, our consultants, each of our consultants are independent contractors and have been doing search work other places and other times.
One of my other concerns with ASA was there was some concerns about integrity and things. There was some of the employees that were helping had some things that were not kosher and were actually called out for that. And I believe one might have actually, I won't mention details, but one of my concerns was integrity. And do you have the same employees that you did on January of last year, 2024?
Not sure what you're referring to. And none of the search consultants are employees.
Okay.
So, you know, I myself, for example, I'm a former superintendent. I'm a former school board representative. And, you know, I do independent contract work for the School Administrators Association because I believe in the mission and I want to be helpful to school districts. But none of the consultants are employees. I'm not sure what you, I mean, I'm happy to discuss this with you, but I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Anybody else have? I mean, I want to make a couple comments, having served on this board for a while and having gone through other searches. One of the things I appreciate that Dr. Ogle has communicated is the fact that this is a service of ASA. And that is, I don't know if refreshing is quite the right word, but that is different than working with a for-profit firm. I appreciate also that they are Arizona-based. Any of the firms I know that we have employed in the past, and for the most part, I don't know that there are any others, national firms based here in Arizona. And so we are dealing with, you know, quite often having to deal with staff that's out of town, having to deal with, you know, consultants that are not necessarily, we would tend to get an Arizona-based consultant, but we often would also get a number of folks who are not based in Arizona. I have also been concerned in the past about the amount of time that our own staff has had to put in to the searches, despite the fact that we are supposedly contracting services from national firms where we thought that's what we were getting and we were not. And again, what I think is much more apparent in this search, if we were to retain these services, is that we know that our staff will be involved. And we can work out what that looks like and what that means and who that is. And we'll know that much more in advance as opposed to, oh, the secretary of such and such firm suddenly is out and suddenly that means Mrs. Chisholm is going to jump in and do things that weren't on the schedule or weren't initially supposed to be under her. So most of all, I do appreciate that ASA understands what it means to be a superintendent in Arizona. Not just what we in PV may want versus what the board of Glendale Union is looking for currently, or Window Rock, or another district. Dr. Ogle knows districts in this state. I know my understanding of the other consultants who I know are consultants with ASA are know as well. The fact is that because ASA is part of a national organization, this would be a national search. It's not that it wouldn't, no matter what it is that we end up determining as the criteria for our superintendent. And knowing that that national search is conducted through other superintendent associations, I think would provide us a much more expansive potential pool of candidates than some of what I have seen with national search firms who seem to have established a pool of candidates that they often take from opening to opening. I don't know that for sure. That may not happen, but just in my experience, that seems to happen more than I would expect. And so I think the network of superintendent or school administrators groups around the country, I think provides us a much broader potential pool. Those are just some thoughts, which is why when the possibility of our being able to retain ASA for this, given past experiences, seemed to be a very refreshing, positive alternative. Dr. Lim?
Can you clarify a little bit for us, Ms. Greenberg, if like these talent agencies that you guys have used in the past are focused specifically to school board searches, or are these talent agencies that are searching for everything from a CFO, a CEO, across healthcare to, school systems, across multiple talent spaces, not just education? Are they?
The firms that we have either used or I believe have provided, proposals have been focused in the education arena. Now, they may also be searching for principals. They may also be searching for CFOs. They may, it's not limited to superintendents, but it, from what I've seen, tends to be within districts and education.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Pantera? Sorry.
Are you done? Yeah, I do like what you said about the fact that it's Arizona-based, but has a national reach. They understand what the needs of the state are, but they can still find people from beyond our borders to come on in here. And one thing that appeals to me is this whole timeline issue, where they make recommendations, but in the end, we're the ones that control how those due dates and timelines go. We still retain our control through the whole process that way. So I find those two things appealing about this one.
Mrs. Christensen?
Yeah, for me, it's about experience and integrity. And we did a detailed rubric, and both you and I had come to the same conclusion that we wanted somebody experienced. Some of the other companies that were out there have done thousands of placements in Arizona, thousands. And I'm looking at our rubric notes right now, so I'm not going to share information that should not be out in the public, but I'm really concerned about not including those other items because there, as I mentioned, there were 3 and we did not include ASA. We decided to look at more experienced firms that have done successful placements in Arizona. And at the time, because I did do search, this organization had not placed one superintendent. There were other principals, et cetera, like Dr. Lim was asking. But our concern here is finding the best superintendent for Paradise Valley Unified. And that's my concern.
Ms. Wani?
Mrs. Christensen, you keep referring to like a lack of integrity on the part of the organization and or people associated with it. And I just, could you substantiate that in some way so that we as a board can understand what your concern is?
Yeah, I'm going to review my notes. I don't know if it's appropriate because these conversations were done in private. I can speak in generalities that when I did a search on this firm, there were, and thank you for correcting me that you don't have employees, but you have people. There was one individual, and I won't name a name, but in Arizona that actually was prosecuted for something that was not appropriate in terms of it, something illegal. So I just very highly concerned, and I do have names and I have details, but I don't feel that it's appropriate for me to say that out loud.
Ms.
Yeah.
Greenberg, may I make a comment?
Yes, Dr. Olin.
So, Ms. Christensen, if I had information like that, I'd be concerned also. I can assure you that no one in the organization that I'm familiar with has ever been prosecuted of anything. And every one of the search consultant is a former superintendent in our state. And, you know, it was held in high esteem by the profession.
Yeah, and if I could provide a little context as well, too. I just wanted to make sure that as we, in the retreat, we had a conversation around what the future is going to look like. And I just want to make sure that the community also understands that although it is a pleasure to have come back and serve in this role as interim superintendent, it is interim. I am not a candidate for the long-term leadership of this district. Also a longtime member of ASA and not aware of any concerns regarding integrity.
Ms. Wani?
Dr. Ogle, you just a moment ago, you brought up that the consultants are former superintendents. Could you give us a little bit more, just sort of background on like how many consultants and how long they've been with you and
Sure.
just the scope of work that they do for you? Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Thank you for your question. Our Southern Arizona person, so to speak, is Dr. Nick Clement, who was a longtime superintendent at Flowing Wells School District. He is now a professor in ed leadership at Northern Arizona University. Dr. Jorenstad is doing is a search consultant for us. He is the former executive director of the Arizona School Administrators Association, a former superintendent in the West Valley and out in the west side, just outside Maricopa County, but was also an administrator in a number of West Side district, suburban districts. We also have utilized Dr. Santarelli, former superintendent at Peoria. He is currently facilitating the search for Glendale Union. And myself, I was a 10-year superintendent in suburban Indiana. And then I was the executive director of the Arizona School Boards Association for 8 years, and have been doing independent contract work for ASA for the last couple of years. That's basically the team that we utilize as search consultants.
Thank you. And at any given point in time, how many searches would any consultant be sort of helping facilitate?
Occasionally there's two. Right now, we have Dr. Clement facilitating two in the southern Arizona region, and there's another one that was just approved, I believe, last night in Yuma County. So he'll be finishing up one and then facilitating two others. Dr. Santarelli's currently working with Glendale Union. I am currently working with Avondale L, and we're in the final stages there. We're in probably phase 4, just about to enter into phase 5 in the next week. So I'll be wrapping that one up here pretty soon myself. Dr. Jornstad is currently doing the search for Winslow Unified District in northern Arizona. So that's what we have going as we speak.
Mrs. Christensen?
I would like to make a motion to move that we revisit the detailed analysis that President Greenberg and I did last year. I'm willing to work tomorrow to do that. I don't want to make a mistake on this. This is one of our most important decisions, and there was a reason why we had bring things a certain way, and I would really like to revisit that. And so I moved to revisit the RFQs and the detailed. I moved to table this so that we can revisit the RFQs and that Ann and I could revisit the detailed analysis that we've done prior.
I'm going to look over at Ms. Berrigan just to make sure we wouldn't revisit the RFQ.
Start all over.
We would start all over.
Correct.
Right, so there's, I mean, we can't go back to the previous, they expired. So what, given that,
I moved to revisit other companies to table this item at this time. I don't think we have enough information.
Ms. Wani?
Because you guys kind of started that process last time, can you just share with us so that, you know, those of us that were not privy to that, what that timeline looked like from like the time that you sort of initiated that process until, you know, to whatever point you got to? Like procuring, you know, the bids and just, can you kind of give us a sense of the timeline last time?
I don't have it right in front of me, Ms. Christensen, do you?
It was about 2 to 3 months, and when we were finally doing the final evaluation, it was about January 11th. And that's one of my biggest concerns, because that's why I had brought this matter up to put on an agenda, but I was rejected on that to talk about this sooner, because we are running against the clock here. And we were ready to go forward with this, and we ended up deciding to go with a local search based on we decided to do an interim superintendent rather than going forward with the search. But it was, yeah, we were at the end stages and we were getting ready to pick, and it was January 11th, but we started the process, I want to say October, November timeframe. Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any comments? There's a motion on the floor to table, I presume, the potential approval
President
Um,
Greenberg, sorry to interrupt, but I do have the timeline from last time, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mrs. Berrigan. Yes.
So December 7th, the request for quote was distributed to all potential bidders. December 21st was the closing date, and 3 valid proposals were received from Arizona School Administrators McPherson and Jacobson and Ray and Associates. December 22nd was the evaluation that you and Mrs. Christensen did. And January 12th were interviews. The selection committee requested to hold interviews with the top-ranked firms as part of the evaluation. And the selection and award of contract didn't occur at any point after that. January 12th was really the last part of the timeline.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Wani?
Do
Mr. Pantera?
you remember, the cost of these other, companies would have cost the district if we'd used them?
I want to say in the 50,000 range. If you gave me a few minutes, I might be able to
I have
find
the
that.
exact numbers, but I don't know if that's appropriate at this time because we would have to do a whole.
Public information.
It's old
Okay,
information.
yeah,
it's
I have
past.
it. I have it on my, I have the rubric.
So it would be for the 2 finalists.
Their prices certainly may have changed, but if the reference is for the pricing from last time.
Yep.
That's public information at this point.
Okay. I have the rubric with the detailed information, but I'll have to, you have it. Okay, perfect. Yep.
And I think, or President Greenberg, when you were discussing, sort of your thought process around, oh yeah, let's hear a little bit from ASA. I think you mentioned, just your experience in the past that you've had with outside, large for-profit firms and sort of like, I think the potential burden that can sometimes have on our staff here. So a question, if I could, pose to you, because that is, I think, definitely a concern, that we spoke about at our retreat, which was, we don't want to put, we want to avoid putting a burden on our, on an in-house kind of search, or, we're already tapped out. And as you know, I don't need to tell you, you're an educator in Arizona, there's only so many resources. And so could you tell us what that would look like as far as, the utilization of our, department here and HR here to
Sure.
best facilitate the search?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Wani. When you hire, if you hire me, so to speak, as a search consultant, it's my job to do that work. Now, developing the profile, which is the very beginning, I would need assistance from, you're probably Mr. Droge to get data and, local profiles and those kind of things. But beyond that, that's the responsibility of the search consultant. And I don't know if I can access the slides anymore, but when you have the duties, of the association, basically that's what you hire us to do. And so, that's how we do it. That's that's when you hire us to do the job, we get it done and we work our tails off for you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Christensen?
President Greenberg, the exact numbers were in the Bonfire Hub portal, and I wonder if Ms. Berrigan has access to that, because that's not letting me.
I don't, but I've texted Ms. Eva Kai as our Director of Purchasing, so hopefully she'll get us something shortly.
Mr. Pantera, do you have a
Well,
question?
I mean, if you have the numbers, I thought you'd been, okay, thank you.
No, I don't have them. I'm asking our Director of Purchasing to get them.
Oh, okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
have access to that system.
I got you.
I mean, I think Mrs. Berrigan was right. They were probably in the neighborhood between $40,000 and $50,000
That's what I remember.
for services alone. That doesn't include, and obviously it wouldn't with ASA either, but it doesn't include travel. It doesn't include anything
Mhm.
like that. It also doesn't include the support that our staff will give, no matter whether we hire ASA as a consultant or we hire another firm. There will also be, costs involved that way. Again, in looking at it, based on Dr. Ogle's presentation and based on the information provided, it feels to me like we would get, at the very least, the equivalent of the services we would be getting from a firm such as our two finalists last time, Ray and Associates, and who was it, McPherson?
Yes.
With the added bonus that the outline cost is much less. And the bonus that we know the individuals we would be working, individuals we would be working with are Arizona based. And I do think that is a bonus in this case.
Although some of the other vendors had individuals that were based out of Arizona.
No, we will
They were-
always get somebody based out of Arizona. But I will say, again, based on my experience in doing this, the last time we had a search, our main consultant was based in California, even though we had Arizona-based consultants. And I was quite honestly surprised about that because the person that we worked with was excellent, but they weren't based here and they didn't know Arizona to the extent that I believe Dr. Ogle and the other ASA folks do.
Right. Well, but I would argue that one of them in particular placed over 1,000 superintendents in Arizona schools. And according to our notes,
That may be true, but that is absolutely over a number of years. So you're talking
Right.
about a number of different consultants.
right? And that's what I was pushing is they had the experience, they had the individuals, they cast a wider net. But yes, we have to consider all things, including price, and they were more expensive.
Yeah, and I'm not, I mean, the wider net piece is also on us. My past experience is we have options in terms of, for example, advertising. And again, that's an expense we incur. And so we can do that. We can, those are pieces that can happen no matter who we would potentially hire to assist us. But
It was my understanding that that was part of the process and that was those advertisements were included in a lot of the vendors that
no,
we
they're
were
not.
looking at.
They're not. And if they are, I mean, it's built into the price.
Right.
And the advertising is not that expensive, but but it's not a matter of they have a wider, I mean, that net can be cast. No matter who's doing this or who's assisting us with the search.
Can I just clarify
Yes.
There's plus or minus 260 school districts in our state. And so there haven't been thousands of placements, even in a decade. So that math doesn't make sense. Maybe they mean nationally.
Probably nationally.
Yeah,
I'll go
Must be
back and
because
look at
there's
my
only
notes.
there's only 260 some odd districts in our state.
And some of our districts have been around for many, many decades, but yeah, it's probably nationally.
Yeah, that would make more sense. Mrs. Berrien, have you gotten any
We
info
do.
for us?
It was 32,000 for Ray and Associates and 38,700 for McPherson. And I believe both of those also charge expenses.
Yes.
Typically, that's typical for the private firms,
Yeah.
the way they do their bidding.
So that was a little less than I remembered, but
President Greenberg, is there any way we could clarify again what the cost of ASA would be?
We submitted a proposal of, I believe it's not to exceed $10,000, but I have it right here.
Okay, I found it. Thank you. I believe it's on the last page of the agreement. It looks like it's the district shall pay 8,000 plus expenses.
Yeah, it's 8,000 plus expenses. The expenses typically, because there wouldn't be a travel you don't have to pay folks to fly in. There really wouldn't be any travel. So it's really more criminal history checks, and miscellaneous other things. But it's a not to exceed 10,000.
8,000.
Does say 8,000.
I mean, there will, if we have candidates from out of state, then we will incur travel costs that way, but that's going to happen no matter who assists us in a search.
Yeah, we don't, you can't pay their travel, so nor can we because of the gift clause
Right.
in our state.
We do have a motion on the table. Can we call the question and decide
I'll
on
call for
that
the question. Can we
motion?
vote on the motion before us?
Okay, the motion before us is to table consideration of approval of the ASA Executive Search Services Agreement. Is there any further, you call the question, so there's no further discussion. All those in favor of tabling consideration of approval of the ASA Executive Search Services Agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Dr. Lim, Dr. Wani was
I was an I.
an aye,
Oh, no, I'm a nay.
a nay.
Sorry.
So to continue the discussion. Okay, so the motion fails, 1 aye, 3 nays, and an abstention. So we are continuing the discussion to consider, right now we're still in discussion of the presentation. So may I please have a motion to retain the services of the Arizona School Administrators, Inc. for the purpose of conducting a superintendent search and approve the ASA Executive Search Services Agreement as presented. Mr. Pantera.
So moved.
All right, now we have the item for approval on the floor for discussion, and I will open it up if there is any further discussion on this item. Ms. Wani?
So, again, just kind of thinking about the timeline here, I have concerns around, a 2 to 3 month delay before even starting a search when we know there are all these other districts that are also seeking candidates. And it's not to rush the process by any means, but I guess from my perspective, I don't know that I've really personally heard anything that would convince me that ASA would do a lesser job than one of these national firms. And so if you kind of are balancing these things, timeline, quality of candidates, right? Like knowledge of Arizona, providing a service, which is why they can have this reduced cost for us. Right, because all decisions are kind of like a balancing. You've got to look at it like that. If we had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, we might actually land at the same exact spot. And that's kind of how I'm trying to think about this, to be frank. So, I think I would be more inclined to even have a continued conversation if the timeline wasn't what it was, because we could indulge in that. But I'm not, I guess, again, I'm just going to reiterate that I'm not convinced that ASA wouldn't be the top choice, sort of no matter what, all things being constant. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now in this conversation.
Mrs. Christensen?
Mrs. Bergen corrected that it was not a 3-month process. It only took us a couple of weeks because we were running into Christmas break, and so it was during the month of December, and then we came back from break, and then we don't have that break this time. We don't have Christmas break that we're running into. So if we do a accelerated look at this, I think we have time to entertain RFQs from another vendor or two. And I think it would be best to do our due diligence and look at more than one, rather than just vote yes and move forward or vote no today.
Dr. Lim?
President Greenberg, I just want to hopefully get some clarification on either whether it's from you having done this or whether it's from Dr. Ogle about if we were to delay the timeline, assume it takes 4 weeks to even get those RFQs and get those conversations happening. Does that put us behind the ball in that we are not going to have a good pool of candidates to select from because we're selecting in May or almost June? And is that going to put us at a detriment of picking a superintendent that is appropriate for an extremely large district?
It won't help. Dr. Ogle, would you agree?
Yeah, the marketplace tends to run from, November, December up into April and May. That's sort of the cycle in a normal year. So the short answer is yes, it doesn't, it's better to get moving. But, as your organization that you pay dues to be a member of, our council would be, you should be comfortable with the process and not, because it is a really important moment in time for your school district. And so we're here to serve and help. That's our job. And we can do this for you. We can, we'd love to be of service and help you. And we think we would do a great job, but we want everybody to be comfortable. And this is a time for a board to work together and unite around the strategy. And so, if that's the way it plays out, then we're still here to support you. And, we're happy to get moving. We'll get moving tomorrow if you ask us to.
Anybody? Mrs. Christensen?
Yes, and I appreciate those comments because I am not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with this process. On November 19th, I did send an email to President Case. Can we reconvene the superintendent search committee sooner rather than later? I'm available to meet after Thanksgiving, come up with a plan. And I was told that the superintendent position would reconvene when the new board convenes. So I think we've put ourselves in that own precarious position. And we did have plenty of times. We've had several board meetings with the previous board where we could have started this process and then still allowed this board to make the decisions. While we can't go back in time, I really think we need to do this the right way. This is such an important decision, and to just go with one presentation, one search firm is a mistake, in my opinion.
Anybody else have any comments?
Well, I would really hate to take more time and put us at more of a disadvantage, only to find out we're going to use ASA anyway. Because so far I haven't heard anything except unsubstantiated rumors about some kind of illegality that would infringe upon my confidence in this particular organization. So I'm really against putting this off.
So,
Mrs. Christensen?
yes, taking away that comment, Mrs. President Greenberg and I did do a thorough search, and there were 3, and we had decided on 2 others for a reason, and there were other reasons why. It wasn't because of that comment. So I would just really plead with this board to take this very serious and to, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to entertain an RFQ from a couple of search firms. They're already doing search firms in other districts, and I'm sure they can pull things together rather quickly via the search firms.
Mrs. Berrigan, can you maybe address how the procurement and rubric process works so that board members who haven't been involved in that have a sense of that?
In terms of the rubric, you can set up a rubric as you see fit. You worked with Mrs. Kaya's last time to, I think, develop that rubric and what was important and relevant to you. What I would say is you'd be looking probably at about a 3-week minimum process. I've never seen an RFQ or RFP go out for less than 2 weeks. And even that's pretty rare when we did it that way last time. So I would suggest doing no less than 2 weeks. It's, it takes a lot of work to put all of that together. And then time for them to evaluate whoever the evaluation committee would be.
Ms. Wani?
And so last year, there were 3,
Correct.
one of which was ASA. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct or not?
That's correct.
Okay. And so at like best case scenario, we're talking 4 to 6 weeks, something like that.
I think you could do it very tightly in 3 weeks, but then, when when I'm hearing Mr. Ogle say that, Dr. Ogle say, that there are a number that are further along in the process, that's where the, potential harm could be done.
Understood. Okay.
I mean, I want to address yes, Mrs. Christensen, you sent a note asking to, I don't remember how you put it, but
Start the process to
start the process
reconvene
again.
the superintendent.
But when I got that email, I mean, and maybe that was, maybe I was interpreting your email a little bit differently, but the circumstances were such that while I understand what you're saying is that we would be at a place where we would ask for an RFQ, we would have gone through the same process. I think we were also, I was trying to be cognizant of the fact that we did have new board members coming in. I was trying to have discussions with Dr. Reynolds as to, his thoughts moving forward in terms of potentially remaining or not as superintendent. And so there were a number of pieces and balls being juggled. So it felt the best that it would be better to wait for the new board to be able to deal with it. Because there were just question marks and other pieces. So and again, it was towards the holidays. As you said, you weren't available until after Thanksgiving. I think, we were up against that again as well.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Christensen.
Right, and I fully understood that the new board was going to select the new superintendent. That's why I wanted to start the process sooner so that we can get RFQs and things like that and then decide who would, if we had another committee. But it's a moot point at this point. It's passed and we can move forward and decide. I just think it would be a very big mistake to just decide today to go with one firm when we haven't received RFQs from others.
Dr. Lim?
Dr. Ogle, I do have a question for you, just talking about the work that you're doing. Have you had any unsuccessful searches for a superintendent, either in your time working with this organization or previously, and what does that look like?
No, I haven't, personally. And it's important to know that the search consultant doesn't place superintendents. This is a board process. The search consultant is a facilitator and a consultant, but the board, it makes the decisions and calls the shots. And so in my 5 decades of working with boards, I've not been personally involved in a failed search. I know districts that has happened to. It's unfortunate. I've not had that experience.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Right, so we do have a motion on the floor. To retain the services of ASA for the purposes of conducting a superintendent search and approve the ASA Executive Search Services Agreement as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
I don't see that there are any abstentions. The motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Dr. Ogle. We'll continue the discussion.
All right. Thank you, President Greenberg. Thank you, members of the board. And just know we'll do our best to make this as efficient and effective as possible and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is acceptance of gifts and donations. We actually have many here, and I'd like to highlight a few. Well, this is still going to be long, but I'd like to highlight a few. At Echo Mountain Intermediate School, Dorito Partners Incorporated donated $1,000 for prizes for the school Caught Being Kind store. At Greyhawk, the PTO provided more than $1,600 for third and second grade field trips. At Greenway Middle School, Mercerich, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Mercerich Management Company provided $5,000 for the site discretionary fund, and North Star Foundation provided $15,000 for the site discretionary fund. At Horizon High School, Morgan Stanley for Shanovich Gifting Account provided $2,000 for the band program. And Barry and Julia Smith donated $3,000 for the Just Serve Club supplies and food. At Mercury Mine, Freeport McMorran Foundation donated $2,000 for AZ Mineral Geography Outdoor Learning Stations. At Mountain Trail Middle School, Shutterfly donated just over $1,000 to the site discretionary fund. At North Canyon, the Thunderbirds Foundation donated $1,000 for boys golf. At Paradise Valley High School, Carvana donated $10,000 to the automotive program supplies and tools. Justin's donated $2,000 for faculty appreciation and staff development. PV Online, our PV Schools Education Foundation, donated just under $13,000 for Intelligent Insights Canvas extension for PV Online. And the PV USD Fine Arts Department, PV Schools Education Foundation, donated just under $2,000 for clay for empty bowls. And the Musical Instrument Museum donated $1,500 for bus expenses for MIM field trips. At Shadow Mountain, ASBO International donated $2,500 for the Eagle Award Scholarship. And Thunderbirds Foundation donated $1,000 for the girls golf program. And at Sweetwater Community School, North Star Foundation donated $12,000 for PBIS for refreshed signs that promote the program, incentives for students and staff, and funds to develop a community center that promotes team building. So we thank all of our donors. If any of you are here, thank you in person. If you know anyone on the list, please extend our congratulations. Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to accept gifts and donations, please?
I move that we accept the gifts and donations.
Does any board member have a comment or question? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have two items that were moved from the consent agenda. So the first is consideration to approve purchase from current cooperative contract ADSPO 16196282 for iBoss Cloud Security. Shall I give it, Dr. Reynolds, over to you.
Thank you. Ms. Berrigan would be here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Berrigan. I would like to know how a cooperative contract differs from a.
Actually, we need a motion on the floor first, and then we'll open it up. So
This is just for
this
number
is
10.
for, yes, this
now-
is for what was F10 for the iBoss Cloud Security.
Is now G4.
G3.
G4, okay. Moving item G4. So moved.
Okay. Now, does any board
Okay.
member have any questions or comments, Mrs. Christensen?
Yes. Thank you. Mrs. Bergen, how does a cooperative contract differ from a JOC? I was wondering what other vendors were considered and what was the decision-making process to come up with the final decision for this contract?
Okay, so cooperative contracts and JOCs are somewhat related, but they are not even really the same thing. It's not even comparing apples and oranges. It's not like both are fruit. One is a fruit and one is a chair. Cooperative contracts can be for any number of commodities. So JOC, which is capital projects, is one commodity that could be considered under a cooperative contract. School furnishings is another item that could be considered under a cooperative contract. Office supplies under a cooperative contract. Anything that a school district buys can be done under a cooperative contract. And a cooperative contract allows us to pool our resources and the potential spend together with other districts and some other public agencies to take advantage of larger buying power, and for that procurement to be done by a lead agency, a lead district. We take a lead on many of them so that others can take advantage of them, and then we take advantage of ones that other districts have done as well. So that's a cooperative contract. JOC is one way to procure construction services for a school district that expedites the process up to $3 million for our district. A JOC can be under a cooperative contract, but they don't have to go together, and you can have a JOC without a cooperative contract.
Thank you. Understood. So, for example, one GPA would be considered a cooperative contract, or that
No,
would
one
be-
GPA is an agency that
Just
helps
they-
develop cooperative contracts.
Okay, so they're a level above, so it's, and then they would, okay.
I don't know about
got
a
it.
level above, but they're the company, they're a company that is
That
their sole
provides
purpose, is to
cooperative.
develop cooperative contracts in conjunction with districts.
Okay. So what other vendors were considered in this decision?
Okay, so let me just a sec. IT vetted additional vendors, and some of these included Cisco Umbrella, GoGuardian, and Lightspeed.
And was the process to come up with the final decision based on price or offerings, or probably a combination of both, I hope?
So in the time between we got the question and were able to put this together, Ms. Copen got sick, so I have her notes on this, but we also have, is he still here? Mr. Jeff Billings is here to answer any detailed questions. So iBoss was selected because it's the IT department's strongest recommendation that it's the most superior product for K-12 education due to what it provides for malware, virus protection, compatibility with Chromebooks, Dell, and MacBooks, since we have all of those, and best in class. But if we have any more detailed questions, I'm sure Mr. Billings can answer them for
Okay.
us.
Thank you, that's sufficient. I was able to click on the links and look, and they were very all-encompassing, and so I was very impressed with this vendor. So I just wanted some clarification on the process, and thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wani?
I was just curious, I know Mr. Jeff Billings, so I know we've got to have some serious security in place now. So I was just curious to know, like, what do we have now, and like, what's the is it a comparison, and is this to replace something that we already have?
That's going to be a question for Mr. Billings.
Professor Billings?
All I know is I have to log in every 24 hours.
Soon to be every 12.
Oh, and my children's passwords are like, how in the world do you remember those? So, but they do somehow.
Yeah, that's a whole another set of questions about working with very young, and children who are challenged with everything from dyslexia to language learners, English language learners, right? So there's some things coming down the pike, but your question, I don't know if you're familiar with Gartner. Gartner, Ms. Christensen is, they're kind of world-class financial and information technology advisor globally, right? And iBoss is in what's called the upper quadrant, which is, they're a leader, okay? Whereas others are challengers in the K-12 space. So it's best of class, but Miss Berrigan and my supervisor, Miss Copen, pushed me further, and we actually got a 25% discount. So this is a contract renewal that is at 25%.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Or-
Any other questions for Professor Billings? Seeing none, are there any other questions or comments in regard to this item? So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of approving purchase from, I'm not going to read the alphabet soup here, the current cooperative contract for iBoss Cloud Security, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. We also moved former item F12 from the consent agenda to become G5, I believe it is. Consideration approval to renew existing district contract 2206 PV for public affairs and government relations consulting. Mr. Pantera may I have a motion to
Yeah,
approve.
I move G5. So moved.
Thank you. Is there any is there any discussion? Mrs. Christensen.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like a reminder of how much these are, because when we got the information, I know it's been approved and this was a multiple year contract, but I didn't remember the dollar amounts. So that was my first question. And then the second question is, what is the difference in the firms? I remember Domina, they provided information on things that were coming from the legislature, and a lobbying organization. And I was not familiar with High Ground, so I didn't know if they were competing and both providing that, or if High Ground was doing something, maybe perhaps with bonds and overrides or something. Just clarification. So sorry, the two questions are, how much are we paying these two firms, and what are the firms doing for PV?
Okay, so starting with Domena, we are paying them $54,000 this year for the lobbying services for our district. And I just want to note that this is the renewal of an existing contract, not the purchase. So this is a renewal of a cooperative contract that includes, that we do multiple vendors when we award cooperative contracts. So the two vendors that are on there are Domena, who we do use, and High Ground, who we don't happen to use. But this is so that anybody else who's interested in services can take advantage from either High Ground or Domena. We use Domena for our superintendent's advisory team to provide legislative updates. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, I lost the number again. All those in
G5.
favor to approve the renewal of existing district contract 2206 PV for public affairs and government relations consulting, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next on the agenda is call to the public. So I would ask that you turn your attention to the video monitors.
Call to the Public is about to convene. This portion of today's meeting allows the public the opportunity to address the governing board. Although state law does not require that the governing board hold a call to the public, the Paradise Valley Unified School District and its board have chosen to do so because we believe it's important to hear about concerns and issues from our community. While Call to the Public is not designed to be a discussion, the board is here to listen. Due to Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot respond to, discuss, or take any action on items brought up during this time. However, staff members may be directed to get back to you and address individual concerns. As a reminder, the point of this and every board meeting is to accomplish the business at hand. and to be able to do so in an open and collaborative way. All in attendance are expected to observe meeting rules, as well as rules of politeness and decorum, so that we may serve as an example to our students that issues can be discussed in a respectful and civil manner.
Thank you. Tonight, we have 4 people who have submitted comment cards prior to the start of the meeting, so each speaker will have 3 minutes for remarks. As a reminder, we ask that you please direct your comments to the board and state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Our first speaker will be Erin McDonald, followed by Ashley Stokes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Erin McDonald. I'm a mother here at Paradise Valley School District. I serve on the board of Mercury Mine, PTG. I started the PTO at Shea Middle School, and now I'm the vice president of the high school PTO. So I love volunteering. I also volunteered for the school closure committee, which I don't recommend volunteering for. But I am here tonight, and Mr. Pantatera, I'm so glad you talked about parent engagement, because something that our parents are very engaged in our community is baseball. So I am here tonight with my baseball mom shirt on. I would like the board to consider leasing the fields to Smash Baseball. Our community, our boys and girls have been playing together for years and years, and we would like to continue that tradition at our home fields, at Roadrunner. We also, the board at Smash has an opportunity to replace the lights that were tipped over by time and the elements. So there's a tremendous opportunity to improve school grounds at no cost to you, and just really keep communities together and keep our kids playing, boys and girls. We have softball and baseball. So I just really encourage you to let Smash have the lease for the fields at Roadrunner School. Thanks so much.
Sorry. Next will be Ashley Stokes, followed by Susan Winder.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Stokes, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I am a proud parent of 3 kids in the PV schools, 1 at Shea Middle, planning to go to Shadow Mountain next year, and 2 at Mercury Mine. For full disclosure, I am on the board of SMASH, the Shadow Mountain Area Sports Home. But I'm really speaking to you as a parent. A few years ago, after COVID, I think, my family felt pretty isolated and kind of cut off from the greater community after all of the shutdowns. And my son came to me and said, I want to play baseball. And I said, I think you're too old. And so I asked around, and there was a local league. And they said, sure, bring him out. No skill level needed. And so he played, and he lost every game. And it was a rough season. And I thought, okay, this experiment's over. We're done. We're good. I've enjoyed it, but we're okay. And lo and behold, he wanted to play again and again and again and again. And we have played every season since. And I've become more and more involved and engaged in my local community. And it's really become a place where my family goes. My daughters both now play in the softball program. And it's really become kind of our home away from home. They go to school all day. And then in the afternoons, we go out and we play baseball and softball. And it has turned into really just a love for all of my kids. The league has now switched over to a new organization, and I have already registered my kids. I'm excited to play again. I've put countless hours into those fields, field improvements, and I love this league. And so I am also hoping that you will encourage whatever decision has to happen to allow SMASH to continue that community feeling at the Roadrunner fields. They are named after Nancy Lane, and we have spoken to Mark Lane, and I think he is, although a Little League guy, I think he is on board with our vision for our community and the growth that we see for this community. And so I think that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Susan Winder, followed by Julie Blumenreich.
Good evening. My name is Susan Winder, and I'm a taxpayer in PVUSD. Let me congratulate the new board members. I look forward to seeing how you make decisions and upon which you base them. As you are aware, I ran on the conservative slate for PVUSD. As is obvious, the liberal slate won. I would like to remind the board that you represent 100% of the taxpayers in PVUSD. That means even the ones that did not vote for you. The split between conservative and liberal slates was 48% for the liberals, 42% for the conservatives. Not a huge win. President Trump won by a much larger margin, reflecting that most of the US voted conservatively. Now, I know you are thinking, but school board elections are nonpartisan. We all know that's not true. President Trump has stated he is going to immediately make an executive order that there can be no DEI, SEL in curriculum in US. We'll have to wait and see if he does that. Last year, your Language Arts Committee did an outstanding job of selecting new curriculum. Shortly after the beginning of the school year, they discovered some SEL and DEI in one grade. They immediately went through and tore out the pages. Unfortunately, your Social Studies Committee did not do such a good job. In the teacher's manual from K to 5 or K to 6, whatever it is, in the front of the manual has a page that tells the teachers how to include SEL in teaching the curriculum. I encourage you to follow what the Language Arts Committee did and tear that out. I'm going to change what the rest of my comment was because I have to make some comments about the superintendent search. First off, Mrs. Christensen, thank you for your bravery and your consistency. I 500% agree with you. I know, Mrs. Greenberg, you've said you've done this within your 20 years experience, so I share this with you. If you want more of what you got, continue to do what you do. Arizona, in probably the past 10 years, has never ranked any more than 46 to 50% in achievement. And so we're going to continue to do what we do. Go for it if that's what you want. Also, it's not about money. It's about what is best for the students and what superintendent will come in and make achievement an issue. I'm going to run out of time, but I ask you, you want to keep things in Arizona like this company does? I wouldn't. I would look to what Florida does. Thank you.
And the last card is Julie Blumenreich.
Good evening, President Greenberg, to all the governing board members, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet staff, and all the guests here today and online, and anyone watching later. I'm Julie Blumenreich. I am the 2024-2025 United Parent Council President, and I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate the new board members and to all of the members of the board. Just wanted to wish you all a happy new year and the most success in the year ahead, and let you know that we are looking forward to your leadership for the district and to working with each of you on behalf of all PV schools, parents, and families as we strive to do all we can to enhance the education experience for all students in the district. So thank you and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. There are no items for discussion this evening. So before we adjourn, I would like to remind you that the next regular board meeting will be held on Thursday, February 6th, 2025 at 6:30. I also would ask that all board members not bolt out of here because we have some signatures we need. So Mr. Pantera, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.